The Cultural Council's mission is to nurture, promote, and support a healthy, diverse, and inclusive cultural sector so that the arts and culture are a part of everyday life for everyone. We invite listeners to discover Florida's cultural capital online at palmbeachesculture.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the ArtiGras podcast. I am your host, Sarah LaPierre. We're going to dive into all things art and culture in Palm Beach County as usual. And I have got a wonderful guest with me here today, Jen O'Brien. Thank you for coming. She's an educator. She's a CEO. She's a creative entrepreneur. And I'm going to say an upcycling expert.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
definitely. We've got a lot of fun questions to dive into. First of which, I'd love to talk about your background, give people a little introduction to who you are and what you do. How did your passion for arts and education lead you into sustainability where you are now?
Well, I think it's really kind of where I grew up. I grew up in Pennsylvania, kind of in a rural area, and things were a little older there. So you just kind of got used to having things with a little patina, a little bit of history. So I think I just kind of grew up with appreciating those things. And my blend of my interest with art, I think naturally led itself to environmental topics because I am a collage artist. So I'm already kind of working with things that people have cast aside. I'm finding possibilities in things that, people are overlooking. So I think I just naturally I'm drawn to that. And I'm drawn to the narratives and these things that people kind of leave behind. So that really fuels my work. And I think for me too, I've dabbled in a lot of forms of art. And for me, education was the best way of still getting to study all the things I wanted to study and not like necessarily focusing on painting or sculpture or something. So art education was great for me. I taught a little bit in Pennsylvania. And then I just found myself in the nonprofit world when we moved to Florida. So I've been here in Florida for 22 years, I believe. So
Amazing.
a long time.
I feel like you're a full Floridian now at this point.
I'm probably years. Am. I don't think I could go back. Yeah. Just like everybody else, right? I've been here long enough. So yeah.
So I know your parents really prioritized a creative environment for you when you were younger. I think I read somewhere that you had like a basement of creative space that you could use and that you did that for your children when they were younger and growing up. Why do you think that's such an important factor in somebody's upbringing to have that creative outlet?
Well, I think, my dad was very musical, so just appreciated the arts. And I obviously had showed an aptitude at a young age. So yeah, I was, the markers were supplied for me, the paper, the walls, like whatever I needed, whatever I wanted to do. So I definitely did that. My mom was a seamstress. So like, it was just about, if you wanted something to bring it about, you're making it. And so that environment of just the creativity was always there and appreciating that. And I think too, just when I was a kid, I went to a lot of concerts and I went to a lot of theater and I went to things that probably at that age that I was going, didn't really appreciate, but I think it was so important because I had that context as I grew older. So really, I think if you're not an artist, you should be growing art appreciators because like the world needs both of those. So really, I think my kids, they went more the musical route, but still the kind of music that they can appreciate is not necessarily what their peers are listening to now, but they understand like what it takes to make that and the context of that and the history behind that. So I think that that's really important. So yeah, my kids have had a lot of opportunities to kind of express themselves in that way. And I think it's really important that kids kind of need to find their thing. And just the skills that are involved with art just lend themselves so much to just real life. I think it's just...
They do. And even if you, like you said, you're not an artist, you can apply them elsewhere in your life for your own personal benefit,
right.
or, call it a spiritual practice or just a hobby that you enjoy, that something that benefits your life. So many ways that art is important at an early age and forever. For those of the listeners who don't know what Resource Depot is, can you give us an overview?
I'll try. Well, we're a creative reuse center. So as a nonprofit, we're taking in other people's excess, things that they have no use for anymore. And we're still maintaining its value. We're still giving it a use, another purpose. So you gave me the upcycling expert title before. I mean, upcycling is really about taking something, you're not recycling it because you're not breaking down the material and making something out of the same material. You're actually improving it. So you're kind of creating a new use for something. You're creating a new item out of something. And I think, what we really represent in the community is a solution for people in this society that are just consuming so much that really we're living in an area where there's like so much like the haves and the have-nots, and there's a great divide of wealth here. And I think that we're providing a way and an accessibility entry point for people to make things possible with materials that they can afford or wouldn't be available to them. So we're kind of that outpost for that. We do provide a lot of education and workshops. We have a gallery space. Most people know us for our shopping, donating things to us, and then you can come access the materials. So we're kind of this hub where that circular economy can happen, where people can kind of, move along with things that shouldn't be in their life anymore for whatever reason, but somebody else can pick it up and maybe pick up a new hobby, up something they didn't know. So.
Yeah, it's a very special place. I get excited every single time I go there, and my frequency gets more and more.
I know we see you there a lot.
But I got introduced to it many, many years ago when my dad was still a working artist, and he would have supplies. He would get samples from companies, things that, maybe he would try out, but that weren't a part of what he was going to use regularly, or just he would have excess of, paints, stretcher bars, all sorts of things that you collect as an artist, as many of us do, have things lingering in our studio for longer than they need to be if they're not in use. But I think it was my mom actually who found out about Resource Depot and started to compile those things that weren't used, and eventually we would go over and make donations. And then, of course, I got to tag along and fill a little bucket for myself of treasure. So it was kind of a balance. We would drop off, but we would also leave with some fun supplies as well, usually.
We really do have kind of what you're saying. I think as an artist, you're always evolving, right? So you'll have these things that maybe like are not part of your practice anymore. And when you bring them to Resource Depot, somebody who maybe didn't have the resources financially or otherwise to kind of get started, now you've given them some tools that they can start to use to express themselves. So I think that that's really kind of what the magical thing is. And we get a lot of donations from, as sad as it is, people that have passed on, like my aunt, so-and-so, my aunt was a great seamstress, and here's all her patterns and and it's a gold mine for somebody who wants to learn how to sew. So it's great to kind of spread that. So, because there's like energy with that stuff that kind of goes along with it.
Beautiful as an artist or creative person that, yes, unfortunately, the reality is eventually we'll all pass on, but that those supplies just aren't binned somewhere, that they're actually, made available to other artists. Like you said, resource wise, it's a gold mine. Yeah.
So we're really about people just really thinking about their consumer habits, but again, kind of celebrating that and kind of being the sharing resource for everybody in the community.
And it is an easy entry point because anyone can go to the shop. Anyone can, shop. I know there's a lot of educators that come in there, a lot of artists, but really anyone is welcome to come shop. And there's places that you have kits set up and you have things for really easy entry if people aren't sure, what am I going to do with these, these items, this stuff? There's ideas already there that they can easily see and gravitate towards and get their toes into reuse pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
So some career highlights that I would love to talk about. Resource Depot, obviously they've had an incredible impact over the years. Believe it started in 1999.
Correct. Yeah.
And I just wanted to talk about maybe some of the milestones that you think are, highlight worthy.
Yeah. Well, so I've been with the organization. I think I'm going on my 13th year. But we've had a lot of growth since that point. And I think for us, just finally getting to our footprint where we are in West Palm was a big win for the organization. It's really interesting because, again, as a donation-based organization, it does matter where you're located because it creative reuse centers are so local. And so we're nestled kind of right on a creative corridor. We have a lot of different demographics that live, from wealthy to working class near us. We're right up against a residential area. So it's like really changed the stream of our donations, which I think provides a lot of variety. A couple iterations ago, which a lot of people remember, you used to be in that industrial park off of Blue Heron. Well, yeah. And
I do remember.
And our a little sketchy, right? But our materials were very different too, because they were kind of reflective of where we were located. So I think that's been the biggest win. It's like where we're at, very accessible, easy off of 95, as we know. Traffic's getting worse and worse. So I think that was really a big win. And what came along with that was space to have our own programs. We were doing a lot of outreach before, which can get really, really taxing.
Right.
You're
to have
on
a
the
team
road
to go out and
Correct.
actually set up and break down and
Yeah. And even though I think we've done a good job earlier of kind of explaining what creative reuse is, when you're going out to somebody, you're at, like, let's say you're at the ArtiGras Festival and trying to explain what we are. It's like, you just got to come, right?
Yeah.
So like having a place that people can visit was also kind of a big win. So I think, we truly are a center now that people can come to. So we have a gallery space that, everything's kind of on wheels, so we can be really flexible and agile. But, the gallery space there, we're getting ready for our Waste to Wonder show, our 7th annual Waste to Wonder. About 18 artists are participating. It's like the epitome of like upcycling in our local community. We have programs upstairs. We do workshops for families and adults. We do our Upcycle Day event, which is fun, like kind of art camp for adults to come and play around.
You have the refashion.
We have our refashion weekend event that's coming up. And so it's just a great destination. And I think, again, it's kind of fun because you could see people kind of walk in and they're just kind of like standing there. Like, this is your first time, right? They're like, and usually it's like, somebody told me I had to come here. We're like, well, we're glad you're here, great. But yeah, so I think I think that's kind of been our biggest thing. But, in the last year alone, our donations are just increasing. I mean, we've taken in almost like 91 tons of materials.
Wow, that's incredible.
And that's like small stuff, because we don't take, your bedroom frame or your sofa or your dining room table. So it's all in like arts and craft supplies and things that have those possibilities. So a lot of stuff, but it's all getting put back into the community for creative things. And people know us as the teacher place, but we're great for teachers, but not just for teachers. We're for a lot of people.
Yeah. And the donations, those are from private individuals and from businesses?
Both. And I think what's really fun too is you'd have somebody that's almost apologetic. They're like, I don't know if you could use this. And you're like, you're trying to contain your excitement. She's like, oh, that's awesome. So we really do get things that, even though, yes, they might be commercially made or they're out there, it's not like you could just go to a Michael's and like buy what's coming on our stoop, for donations. Right. And so I think that's what's make it really exciting. And then, the things are like, just as things are shopping, things are coming in. So the flow, the ebb and flow, the yin and yang of materials is always happening. So it's always like a place. There's always something new. You're going to discover something new when you come.
So if somebody wants to visit,
yes.
What are their hours to visit?
So Tuesday through Thursday, 11 to 5, and then Saturdays, 9 to 2. I know people want us to be open longer, but it does take some time to sort through everything, kind of make it available. So, those are the times we have. And so that's donation and shopping. And then, of course, when we have special events, we're open as well. But.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm going to mention it because you kind of alluded to it, but there is a lot of organization and all of the materials are very organized. A lot of people might think it's an overwhelming place to step into, but truly everything is organized by category of art being made, from fabrics and colors and types of things. I mean, it's all really well done.
We try really hard.
And easy to work through.
Not always easy. They're not set, our inventory is not set or anything, but yeah, and so we do that with the help of a lot of volunteers, and we're always looking for people that if that's their thing, especially they like to organize and sort things, we can always use the help to do that.
Good to know. Yeah. Give a shout out to future volunteers who want to come organize Resource Depot. How was it navigating Resource Depot through the pandemic, through the COVID-19 pandemic? And how do you think that shaped your leadership?
Well, I think the biggest challenge we had around that time is we, even though we were in our same footprint, we had some changes with our landlord. So our space was changing. We were actually moving to the other side of the building, and we had everything geared up. It was like our 20th anniversary. We're going to and we were maybe open a month and a half. And then the pandemic hit, which nobody knew what was going on. And it was just a really interesting time, because since we were mostly service oriented, we were open to the public, we were much like a retail store and trying to follow what retail was doing, but we weren't prepared to go online, and our things were can't go online. And so it was kind of this wow, how are we going to do this? But it did create some innovation. We started to make starter kits. which our art is capitalized because it's basically like our materials, a lesson plan, some suggestions, and it's very open-ended. And so that's been a delivery mechanism that we've kind of continued since then of getting our materials out into the schools and places where people can't come to us. But our biggest concern, I think, was like the germ thing, right? Everybody was like, how long does it stay on surfaces? And like, what do you do? And we were just like, are people even going to want to reuse anymore? Because everything was starting to get disposable because you didn't want to spread anything. And so we were just like, what happens to this whole industry of secondhand? Well, there were so many life changes that happened during that time that like we were busier than ever and it's never stopped since. I mean, it was like you had life changes. Unfortunately, again, you had people passing on, you had people changing careers. They're now working from home. You had people downsizing, people moving. And so it just really was an influx of donations. And then because there was so much change on the other side of that, people needed those resources because the economy was affected too. And so we became, an outlet for more affordable things and other solutions for people when they couldn't, the real option didn't present itself. So we also increased, we added donation appointments too to mitigate. And that's been helpful because then we kind of know what's coming in. So there were some good things that we kind of did by necessity because of, the contagion factor. But in the end, they were kind of good for us to kind of get to know our donors a little bit better and develop better communication. Because now, if somebody's putting on their list that they're going to bring us something and we're like, oh, not for us, we can call them up. And we've kind of, pride ourselves in trying to be the local somewhat experts into like where you should take your things. Because not everything's great for Resource Depot.
Right.
There's a lot of people with donor guilt that like, I know I shouldn't throw this away, and like, sometimes maybe you should, but we tend to know if it's not good for us, we try to refer people to where they can do it because they want to do the right thing. We recognize that. So we're trying to give them some solutions to that.
No, it's great that you can foster those relationships in a way that, again, educates people further on how and where the appropriate places are for them to, dispose of something if it needs to be disposed or if it's reusable, whether it's through Resource Depot or another entity where it can go. That's wonderful that you can share those insights.
And then, having a little talk with them about like, some things really do end up being trash. And like, why is that? Were they not made well, not quality, and poor purchasing decisions, things like that, where we can talk to them about better solutions for next time. We never shame, but we just try to educate on also like, if you want to make less waste, here's some other ways to do it.
Sure. Like if somebody's bringing you, 10 unused, half-used rolls of Christmas wrapping paper, then you can maybe slightly suggest, doing some pretty fabrics that you can reuse. Right. And I love when I see people making, those kind of swaps.
Yeah.
I mean, they're simple, but they're great to see.
Yeah. And there's some things that people give to us, I have to say, because I think when you went with the wrapping paper, I was thinking some people have saved the pretty outsides to like the toilet paper, like, when it's wrapped in paper. Sure, it's really pretty. And it's usually the caveat of somebody can make art with this. I'm like, why don't you make art with it? Yeah. Like, why does it need to come to us? But, so again, we're celebrating the fact that like, okay, you're seeing purpose in this material. But again, some things are better off in the recycle bin. Recycling's great. Obviously reuse has the hierarchy in the order of the R's, but, some things can be recycled and that's where they should be. And other things, are great for us.
Sure. It's good to distinguish.
Yeah. So don't save your toilet paper wrappers for us anymore. Thank you. Public service announcement.
So I want to know, how do you measure, because there's a lot of measurements happening at Resource Depot. You already mentioned a certain tonnage. Right. How do you measure success?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's always challenging for nonprofits too, because you can get really in the weeds and also get some false sense of like things being successful or not. I think for us, really, it's community engagement. And I think really since we've been in our local footprint where we are now and in really encouraging the visitors, I think that's really been our metric of success. We see about 1,000 shoppers in a month. And again, we're not open every day of the week. So for us, it's like really big. And the same with the donors. The donors have just been increasing. And so just that engagement is like success for us, that people are entering this, again, circular economy and they're participating. Because that's really, we're nothing without the donations. So if nothing's coming into us, we have nothing to give and nothing to base the education off of. So, in an ideal world, sure, there won't be us because everybody'd be doing it on their own. But, I think that's really seeing people participate in our programs and the engagement on social media. There's a lot of sharing of what we're doing. And again, like I said, the person that's coming in there, like looking around, my friend just told me to come here. So like that to us is like people are talking about us and you have to know Resource Depot. And so like that's really how we kind of measure our success. But yes, we do track pounds and people and all those other things. But yeah, I think, we take in roughly close to 20,000 pounds a month. It's been on the increase. So, and that's with a staff of 7 that we're kind of doing everything. So, it's been a great, way to see a team come together, and we do get a lot of help from our volunteers. So just everybody helps.
Everybody helps with the success.
Yeah.
So tell me about, I didn't have this written in my questions, but I would love to hear more about the gallery, the gallery with its RE. Right.
Yeah, we're a little quirky that way. We like to use the REs when it applies. They're capitalized and things. So our gallery was really important because we wanted to support local artists. We realized that there really needs to be a lot more venues for local artists to kind of get their foot in the door, so to speak. We do have a lot of artists that participate in our programs that this may be their first show that they've ever done. And it's really exciting to see that they felt like we were the right fit for them. But our gallery has 5 different exhibitions throughout the year. And Chelsea Odom, who's our director of education and artist relations, kind of helps curate those shows and plan those shows. We do have some that have call to artists, like our Waste to Wonder show. We do a call out. But really, like, our criteria for it is that the artists need to be using repurposing, reuse, whether it's materials from us or things that they've collected, and or an environmental message. We have had some artists in there that may have been painters, but it's like a really deep environmental message. We had one that was a printmaker that was all about like sea level rise. And so they were using a lot of our materials in their work. But, again, the idea is to have the focus of the gallery be much about the possibility of repurposing and kind of elevating that. We have our teachers, again, coming through and maybe making caterpillars out of the toilet paper tubes for their, Hungry Caterpillar lesson. But then we have these artists over here that are doing amazing things where you might not even recognize that item was something that was found in a yellow bin around the corner.
Right.
We have one artist from Waste to Wonder that still stands out because I couldn't even recognize it. They had taken these gold forks, and the way that they had melted them, burned them, they all like curled up. And it's like, it just turned them into something so beautiful. But yeah, it was just, plastic silverware.
Yeah. It's so fantastic to walk in. And I mean, you immediately, because as you walk in the doors, the front doors, the gallery is on your left as you enter. Yeah. So you have to kind of gravitate towards that before you go back and, and do your treasure hunting for the day. Yeah. And it's amazing to see the variation that you've had through the shows and through the exhibits there. I mean, group shows, but also individual artists. And just the variety of work and the messages that have been shown is really inspiring. And the fact that you are viewing all of these works that are maybe using resources found there, or like you said, collected things that the artists have, gathered themselves. It's just wonderful to see and get those inspirations right before.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you say that it's inspiring, because that's kind of the intent. It's because we want people to come in and like be kind of wowed by what they see, and again, see those possibilities. Because it does add value to the materials and the experience, and value to these artists to have a place to show their work. And I think, too, it's like we have an exciting show coming up this spring that we got a bunch of historic windows donated to us. They were just like the coolest thing. And it's normally not something we take, but we kind of, again, when we get those would you take questions, we're like, it's usually dangerous because a lot of us are artists on staff, and we're like, so we could easily see the possibility. But Chelsea kind of conceptualized this show that's going to be curating some artists that are going to address these windows, using them in work, but to kind of address the housing crisis that we're in that community here. So that's going to be kind of a fun show that'll have a little bit more social context in a different way, but that's coming up in the spring. So sometimes our shows are really based off of like, wow, we got this donation of like a bunch of things. We got to do something about it. And like,
nice. I think I've seen that before with bicycles, right? Where you, was that just a bunch of bicycles that were donated? How did that work out?
Jack the Bike Man's our neighbor around the corner. Right. We're just like, we should do a show together, so that's kind of how that came about. And, we had some artists that didn't make them rideable. They totally took them apart. And other ones were like true art bikes. So like, again, just trying to be inspired and like, so it's a mixture of those challenges for artists to maybe think differently. But we've had a lot of artists that have come and like maybe applied to Waste to Wonder and shown they're like, you've changed the way that I make artwork now. Like it's just really changed their process of now seeing like what they can do with found objects.
That's amazing. And I mean, you've already touched on this through a couple of things we've talked about, but there's so many ways that Resource Depot engages in a diverse community, right? You are this hub for a lot of different backgrounds and peoples to come together, whether that's through donating, through shopping, through taking a class. Are there any other ways that you're particularly excited about that, how people engage with Resource Depot?
I mean, I think, really the way that it's exciting to pull all different people from walks of life together is, again, the materials are kind of the unifying factor, and the accessibility to that. There's not an economic disparity that is created by reuse. And so I think that that's one way. Obviously, we're trying to get our messaging out to different parts of the county. It's a big county. We try our best. But I think, we're trying to be sensitive to the needs of different organizations. We do get a lot of groups that come and will take field trips and get involved with us too. But largely, we're just trying to be sensitive to the fact that everybody kind of knows that we're a resource and that it's open for everybody.
Nice. Can you tell us about some of those partnerships, whether it's, bigger organizations or local schools that you regularly work with?
Yeah, well, our starter kits have been really great because we've been able to target some of the schools that are kind of in the areas that the arts aren't necessarily reaching them. So those have been really great. And we're actually in a pilot year of a 2-year grant with the Cultural Council for a Collective Dreams program. We have a teaching artist that's going out into community centers, and it's kind of intergenerational. It's not just necessarily with youth, but to kind of capture the dreams for like a waste-free planet. Like what are we really seeing? Like how do we solve some of these issues that we're having with pollution in our planet? And so they'll be guided to create an art piece, and we're going to do an online gallery of all the pieces and kind of collect some of the thoughts, because I think that will be really interesting to kind of see, again, young and old, like how they're viewing this, and is it from positivity? Is it, how are we feeling about this? Yeah. But again, starting a conversation. And so that's like an exciting program that we have. We're in after school programs as well through our primetime programs. So we're just trying to get out there. I think our gallery, with the program there too, we have adults coming in through workshops and family workshops. So it's just nice to kind of engage all types of artists and groups to come through.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have another question about how it relates to ArtiGras, but I'm going to take a brief pause, and we're going to hear from our wonderful sponsors, the Cultural Council, and give them a moment to share a message with you.
Those dinner reservations and tea times will have to wait, because there's an art-filled paradise beyond these beaches. A mecca of masterpieces, spectacular sights by day and night. A cultural capital that's calling your name. See so much more than you came for in the Palm Beaches.
So for today's Medical Minute, I'm here with Dr. Sonia Olson, a liver specialist for the TGH Digestive Health Center. We're going to talk about fatty liver disease. That sounds really bad, Doc. So tell me more about it. What is it?
Fatty liver disease is not good. And unfortunately, there is an epidemic of fatty liver disease in this country. This is a disease where the liver inappropriately stores fat. Over time, that fat causes inflammation and even scar tissue and could cause cirrhosis.
How do you know you have it, Doc?
Fatty liver disease most of the time does not cause symptoms until it's very advanced.
Should I go out and get a test right now?
Well, that's an excellent question. I don't think so, but
Okay.
You can't tell if someone has fatty liver disease by looking at them. We do know that some patients are at higher risk. So any patient with type 2 diabetes should be screened. And any patient with metabolic syndrome, so 2 or more risk factors, such as obesity, hypertension, high cholesterol, or sleep apnea, these patients should also get screened.
How do you treat fatty liver disease?
Well, diet and exercise go a long way in both preventing and treating fatty liver disease, but now there is a medication available for certain patients with fatty liver disease, making the conversation with your doctor even more important.
Awesome, Doc. Well, that's some great information. Thank you so much. And that was your Medical Minute here with Dr. Olson. Thanks so much for coming out.
All right. Next question. So let's see here. We talked about so much community, right? I did want to ask about, you've been the chair of the sustainability committee for Palm Beach North. Mm-hmm. And you've previously been a part of the steering committees what kind of efforts and changes have been made over the years at ArtiGras specifically to become more sustainable of an event?
Yeah, Resource Depot has been involved in ArtiGras for a very long time, preceded me. And mostly we were in the kids area, but it's been really great to see that their efforts for being a little more green have been just growing each year. And so I think with my involvement with the chamber, and I live up north, so it's kind of near and dear to my heart too. I think just really that mind shift of doing what you can and really educating businesses, and it extends to events of like, what are some areas where maybe it's low hanging fruit to try to mitigate your carbon footprint and your waste footprint versus things that might be more challenging and they're part of a longer range plan. So I think with ArtiGras, especially the concessions and merchandise, I know I've seen some concerted efforts into really try to mitigate waste there. Just, really editing, like how much inventory do we need? How many of those shirts do we need? Posters, so forth. What can we do with off-season merchandise? And the same with the concessions. They're introducing the aluminum refillable cups, just different things like that. And I know recycling has always been an issue there that through Solid Waste Authority that we've been really supporting that. But just it's kind of it's 3-tiered effort, right? Because it's not just the committee, but it's like the vendors and it's the artists and it's the patrons. And so there's opportunities for all of those people that are enjoying the event and part of the event to kind of be a part of that. I think the e-program too, of having a downloadable program instead of printed is like another big win, and it's saving money too. Yeah. And I think the more that businesses realize that there may be a little bit of investment, whether it's monetary or otherwise, into like making some of these changes, in the long run, it will pay off. Because you're not wasting it. It's also a little bit easier to disseminate to people. Everybody's mobile now,
right
so.
there, and your consumer is on their phone already.
They're already looking here, so you can get them.
You might as well be there too.
Yes,
that's great. Yeah, this will be coming up to the 40th year, which I'm very excited about. Of course, I'll be participating again.
That's exciting.
And this year, actually, I will be bringing this will be the first time I've ever exhibited with my assemblage work. A lot of the materials are brought from Resource Depot.
Yes, I see you buy our broken bits a lot.
Yep, I am in those bins all the time and always inspired. So yeah, I'm excited for this year's. And I know there's been features that you've done with Resource. Like I don't remember what year it was, but you had schools participate in decorating and designing recycle bins, right? That were featured throughout the show. So even things like that, where you're highlighting it and, just creating that much more awareness for people as they're attending events like that, whether it's ArtiGras or any other event, that it's just popping into their mind that they don't necessarily need that, disposable cup, or they can bring their, their own water container, those things just, popping up in your brain just a little bit more.
Just a little bit. I mean, that's what we say, just a little, one action. You don't have to do it all perfectly, but if you just pick one thing and just try to do the best you can, that's better than nothing. So I think too, it's fun for us at ArtiGras, and I was trying to look back to see how long we've been doing it. I think it's at least 9 years of making the artist awards. So for every category, when the artists get we've been making awards, and one year they were hats, and, we take some of our trophies and make, artist trophies, but they're usually themed off of, if
the category, right?
It's the category, which is kind of fun. I have to say mixed media is probably like our hardest one because there's too much stuff to add to that one. But yeah, we made those. And then we've started to, our staff has started to go around in the festival and make our own little awards just for the artists, just recognition awards of artists that we see that are, doing what we do in the gallery, right? The artists that are repurposing. And there was a really cool artist last year that had, he was making record players, but they all out of old instruments. And so it was really cool.
Amazing.
So we're just you get an award, So it's been, and the artists really love that too, because I don't think that the layperson necessarily appreciates that conscious choice of using that material and how it really is informing their work. And so I think that they get really excited, even if they don't win the category award. They're like, this is the coolest thing I put up in their booth. So it's just kind of, from one reuser to another, it's just that kind of fist bump, hey, you're doing good. Keep it up. So,
yeah, it's nice recognition. I like that. That's a good system. So I always ask this question of all my guests. If you had to name one, entity, event, piece of public art, organization that people who are living or visiting in Palm Beach County were going to visit, which is the one that you want to tell everybody about?
Have to be our place.
I'm okay with that answer.
No. I mean, really, I don't think a lot of people realize we have a gallery. So I think I am going to use that as my answer.
You should. Yes, I fully support
use that as my answer. But second to that, I think our other really fun event that everybody should check out is our Catwalk Student Fashion Show. So we're having it again for a second year at Loggerhead, April 26th. And really, the program is starting soon. The January 3rd, I believe, is the last day for students to apply. And really, the application process is more of like your intent to participate. We take students from grades 5th through 12th. That they don't have to have experience in fashion design or sewing or anything. We have a auxiliary program for that, but just to be open to making wearable art out of our materials. And so for the last couple of years, we've partnered with Mounts, we've partnered with the Norton, and again, Loggerhead. We've kind of found that nice. I mean, we already have a synergy, but with their new expansion, they have a beautiful venue. We do our runway by the Shark Tank there. It's really cool. But the students take a tour of Loggerhead and learn about their marine conservation efforts, and that becomes the muse for their work. And so that they create work at Resource Depot, and so we have the runway. So I'd have to say that's like another cultural event that everybody should check out for sure in April.
And that's an annual April event every year.
Annual April event. We usually kill ourselves every April. It's like Earth Month for us. So everything gets crammed into April. So yeah, if you want to check out Resource Depot, we'll have a lot of things going on in April as well as other times of the year. But yeah, that's April 26th up at Loggerhead.
Good to know. Yeah. And that's open to the public, or they're ticketed?
Open to the public. It's actually part of their Earth Day event that they do there. So there's other stuff going on. They do a beach clam in the morning. So like you could really come and spend the whole day, check out their new facility expansion and check out the runway and do some shopping up there in the store, like a bunch of stuff. It's really great. Visit some turtles.
With that runway show, do those pieces end up in the
yeah.
So if you can't make the event, I'm wondering, is there a way to see them post?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's one of our shows in the gallery. So they come afterwards and they'll be in our gallery for a little bit so you can see them. But it is more fun to see the students.
Oh, yeah.
Most of them model their own creations.
Really? Oh, so lively. Yeah, I love that. Have you ever modeled the creation?
No, but I forced my daughter to do it a couple of years till she's kind of like, Mom, I think our relationship would be much better if we didn't do this anymore. Like, I agree. So she dabbled, but I think again, it's like the experience is just so cool. Like, even when we did it at the Norton, the one year they walked around, the sculpture there in the front with the
fun.
I can't think of the name, but it was
the
just
eraser.
Really
the sculpture.
Yeah. So it's just really neat for them to be in this like venue around. And in that year, the muse was the artwork. They picked it, so it's kind of nice. Because we thrive on partnerships at Resource Depot. So I think that's another reason why I really like that event too, not just because it gets young people involved in showcasing their skills, but just like it's been a great partnership just to kind of show the synergy between other arts and cultural organizations and what we do.
Yeah, that's an incredible partnership to have in the community. And I mean, like you said, it's a beautiful venue. It's one that's getting a lot of traction. So you're probably, having people who are coming through that maybe did not even know that event is occurring.
Yeah.
And they stumble upon something pretty fantastic and get introduced to a whole new world.
Yes, definitely.
So in your work, I feel like you're required a lot of balance between creativity, leadership, and environmental advocacy takes a lot. Nonprofit work really takes a lot. Yeah. What inspires you?
I think that I'm fortunate to be kind of in a sphere where, nonprofits, I think, just unfortunately have a lot of competition. There's so many nonprofits in this area. We're so unique. It's such that I can kind of forge my own path. And I think that's kind of what keeps me going. I really have the confidence of my board to kind of, push through and come up with ideas. And so they really encourage that creativity. So I think for me, it's like knowing that like my staff and I are really steering the ship and like we can make things happen and we can jump after these opportunities when we see them arise. I think that's what kind of keeps me going. And I think my biggest magnum opus that I want to like kind of create during my time with Resource Depot is like formalizing this referral network concept of really getting some sort of public platform where people can engage with like, I have such and such item and like they want to donate it somewhere. They want it to go to a good use. And it would filter out like those places and maybe they want to support an organization that fosters animals. Well, then they can pick among the places that take their, such and such item and they can learn a little bit more about that nonprofit. And I think collectively too, fellow donation-based organizations, and nobody wants to point the finger at like, that was really kind of terrible of you, but like people need to learn also how to be a good material donor.
Sure.
And what really makes retains the value of their donation. Don't leave it on the stoop when it's going to rain for a minute, every 5 minutes in Florida, like that kind of thing. And like, we're fortunate that we don't take big things that, like a big sofa that like it rain on and gets ruined. And then that nonprofit has to throw that away. Like they have to pay to throw that away.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that, like, yeah, the convenience was there for you, but you really gave a big inconvenience. And plus now it's totally trash. Like nobody can use it. So I think it's just nobody wants to call anybody out, but I feel like collectively we could save so much more out of that waste stream unnecessarily if we could educate a little bit on that front. But I think really people just, we're naturally getting the questions, and I would just love to be able to kind of have this place where other nonprofits can kind of participate, even if it's something they need temporarily, whether it's disaster relief or whatever, just having one hub where like, I need this thing. And I guess it would be a little bit like a free cycle, but more a nonprofit donation-based one, right? Okay. Where you can be like, I have these items, I want to get rid of them, and here's the perfect outlet for them.
Yeah, and that could be nonprofit to nonprofit, or
absolutely
donor to nonprofit.
And I think too, it also allows the nonprofits to kind of control inventory, because you can say you need a lot of something, but you might only need it for a little bit. But that message is a little delayed with the donor, right? And it keeps coming. Right. And so kind of, again, that education piece of like letting people know, really, like at some point, we won't need this thing anymore. We'll have a different need, and to kind of stay on top of that.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think of when we, see unfortunate natural disasters, and people are very inclined to be generous, but not always place their generosity in the most useful way, like donating clothes or toys or things that they think are comfort items, which are completely understandable. But then they're items that often we see end up just in trash piles because they
have no place. They don't have a home for these animals to be, yeah, exactly. It's a little short-sighted, right? So I think it gives it not only would be a great interactive platform for just donation traveling throughout the community, but just for that conversation to happen of just really like, how do you really fulfill a need in the community with this excess? And again, from our standpoint with Resource Depot, more about just reducing the waste in general, like really rethinking why are we consuming this in the first place? Is there a better solution? It kind of goes with our whole Enough manifesto that we have on our website. That's just like, enough is enough. And like, you have to decide what's enough for you. You have to decide, what really is, are these things serving me? I mean, stuff has such an emotional connection, and we're not trying to negate that. It's just, you need to manage it. So we're trying to help people do that.
So speaking of managing, my next section is on sustainability.
Oh, yes.
And we've probably already touched on this a little bit, but how do you think creative reuse centers like Resource Depot continue the larger movement towards a closed loop economy?
I mean, I think it really is just opening up the door for that conversation to happen about, why is this stuff, why is the stuff you're donating things you don't need anymore? Are you just going out to buy the next big thing? Have you had some other changes? I think it's just really more about that educational component, because I think that's really the biggest thing that creative reuse centers can contribute to this issue of just so much waste. I mean, America just generates so much compared to other countries, and we need to be held accountable for that. And I think one of the solutions is, things have already been made. Let's not make more. Let's slow that down, stop using some of those resources, and then be nicer to each other. Like, other people need things. So it's almost this like pay it forward model that we have. But then also we're encouraging creativity, and that's also what's going to take is out of the box thinking of just, can't just keep doing the same thing. Isn't that the definition of sanity, right? Like, just keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. And I think that's where creative reuse centers kind of disrupt that cycle of just that mindless consumption. So we're really, that's really a pivot that we've had, kind of with the pandemic around that time, is just that we were starting to realize we were getting like brand new stuff donated to us. And we're like, how do we deal with that? Because it's not really a reuse center, right? So we just saw an opportunity to enter that space to really start to address that. And it's been great because nobody's really talking about that. And I feel like that's something that we can kind of keep going in the community and talking about, why do we have so much stuff? And again, the emotional connection, and how do you kind of break from that cycle? Even around the holidays too. Like this week, it's like, did you get all your shopping done? It's like, well, why do we go immediately there? It's like, did you spend some time with your family? Did you, did
you make memories?
Yeah. Like, we're focusing on the wrong things. And again, just pushing back a little bit on those cultural norms of just like consume and take in And then it doesn't matter. Out of sight, out of mind, right? It goes into your curb and you're not thinking about it again. And so we're just trying to challenge that. But so that's kind of where I think, we're really unique, because there's no other creative reuse center in South Florida. I think the next one closest to us is Gainesville. But again, they're so community-based. We're all kind of operating a little differently. So, but again, it's important that there should be more of us. There should be more. Because there's definitely
I always,
stuff.
when I talk about Resource Depot to people, which, especially when I had a public studio and I would have some of my pieces, my assemblage pieces up, that people always gravitate to, because there's a lot of items that you can, sit and kind of treasure hunt for a while in it. But I love to talk about Resource Depot and just let people know about it, and of course share my excitement. But also just let them know that this is kind of a far and few in between thing. And we're very lucky to have this center here in Palm Beach County and in South Florida, because there aren't many of these places where you can not just, of course, donate and find materials, but that you can have educational programs or, find artists who are doing work with reuse in their materials. There's just not that many spots for them. So it is a thing that we're very lucky to have here.
Yeah, I think the number is like 152, give or take, right, of creative reuse centers just in the U.S. So I think, there probably is about 3 in Florida, but again, Florida's a big state.
Huge.
So I think that's, again, I think we should be looking for ways that we can kind of contribute to this. And I see success for Resource Depot and that people have heard of us. And now my next question, but you haven't been to us. And
you're right.
So that's where it's like, well, we've been around for 25 years. It's about time you come in.
Time for a visit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what are some small everyday changes that you like to recommend for people who want to try some more sustainability in their lives?
Yeah. There's definitely some easy ones that probably they're somewhat aware of, whether or not they're doing them correctly or not. Obviously, looking for things that can be reusable, bringing reusable bags, recycling, those kind of things. I just think, again, it's the slow shopping, taking a pause and realizing, do I really need it? What's the end life? Looking for materials that, we're not against buying things. We recognize that we all need to do that, but just buying better, buying things that are well made, quality, have a warranty. You'd be surprised by how many products that are just kind of meant to break. So you buy a new one in the next year or two. And we just can't stand for that as consumers. We have some power to make better choices and show that that's one of the reasons why we buy products. And so I think that's something else too. But I think, a lot of people, it's funny because when I run into a lot of people, it's almost like they want to tell me don't worry, I do this, or Jen's around, make sure you recycle. It's like, well, that's fine. But as long as you're doing consistently, and not everybody's consistent. There's a Ziploc bag or two that's in my house. I'm not going to lie, but it's just, when you have the choice to make and you can make it. And I do think in some cases, sustainability in that respect is a little economical. I can afford to make better sustainable choices. Some people can't. I read a really great article about plastic and how, really in the medical field, sometimes it's necessary. But for somebody like me who can make a better choice, like a cloth bag or something else that I can do, I should do that. And that would be my responsibility as a citizen, right? So I kind of just see that's everybody kind of has to pick their lane and try to stay in it the best they can. And if that's going well, then adding something else, and it's kind of a little bit like working out, right? You go to the gym, you're going to stay there for a little bit. It's oh, this is going well. I'm going to add a little bit more. I think that's just kind of how you have to do it. If you go gangbusters full on and just try to do zero waste, you're going to fail because you need your tools and you need that consistency. And if you make a mistake, that's fine. Just get back on your lane and keep going. And every little bit does make a difference. It really does.
Before I let you go, I have a few more questions.
Yeah, that's fine.
One, I wanted to briefly touch on the artwork that is behind you. So this is some artwork that you brought in today. It's a collage piece of yours. And I'm seeing, maybe elements of reused old advertisements, old photographs, old postcards, or maybe vintage magazines. The birds are beautiful. I'm a big bird watcher, so I like them a lot. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you create?
Yeah, I'm really drawn to kind of 20s to 50s imagery. I just think it's kind of, the era in which my parents grew up kind of informed a lot of my upbringing, right? And so I just think, in fact, my dad at my rehearsal dinner was reading from a 50s textbook for home ec of just what the woman should do. And I think I've always been kind of interested in the play of the way that women were portrayed, especially just kind of that old iconic advertisement in imagery with other. I've always liked birds. I don't know why. But we get a lot of books in of like indexes of like.
Right. Yeah.
So I tend to cut a lot of those out and kind of play around. So yeah, I like the juxtapose of that. And I think too, it's like the black and white versus the color. So it's either reverse. I started to notice patterns in my work when I was just playing around. It's either like a colorful image with black and like, I don't know. So I think I just like that graphically. But yeah, for collage for me, it was much easier than probably what you do. Start with you probably paint your canvases too, a color or something, but like starting with that proverbial white canvas and just like, here's what's in my head. It was so much easier for me to start with other things and start to play around with them. And I think a lot of my work, like I use the narratives of kind of the imagery that's already there and kind of weave things together. So it's, I'm very much informed by the materials, but I'm kind of always been a paper girl.
Okay. And is this a practice that you that you do regularly? Is your art practice something that you?
I mean, I wish I would do it more. I think that's the blessing and the curse of working.
Listen, I do it full time, and I still wish I would do it more. So
okay. Well, I envy you because I see you pretty. I think for me too, like working at a creative place, a lot of my creativity does get sucked into my job, which is great. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's hard to like flip the switch. If it's like a moody day, like that's when I want to make work, which I'm sure a lot of artists feel. But I kind of go in fits and starts. Like that was actually from a studio marathon that we had at Resource Depot with one of our gallery artists that kind of just forced me for a couple of days to stop what I was doing and make. And so I tend to do that. I without the luxury as a collage artist too, like spreading out, I kind of need to
space. You need physical space to
So when I have the opportunity, I'm hoping over break I have some time, but yeah, I try to keep at it. And it is really hard. One of my other series that I did, because I pass by it every time on my way to my office is like where we keep all of like the unfinished artwork. We get canvases that people kind of like abandoned.
Yeah.
And there was these, they're probably terrible for the environment, like these little diamond painting.
Oh, I've seen. Yeah.
But they were like half done. And then I pulled those in and I created this whole like series of like other people's artwork is basically like I pulled in. So I basically made collages from like other people's failures. So sorry to say, I did sell some of them, but so they're lost. But but it was just again, I think I just respond better to like, oh, what's this, and like, how can I make it better?
Well, you're having a conversation with artwork this way, right?
Yeah, and I think I do that in my work too. I mean, that's the way my brain works, right? It's like, hey, this is already happening. How can we make this better? So like, as you get older, you kind of learn more. It's I see the marriage of kind of the way I see life and the artwork I create, just like any other artist.
I love that. No, it's a beautiful piece. I'm glad you brought it in today. Thank you for sharing that with us. Lastly, I want to leave our audience with some advice. So if somebody's looking to get into maybe arts education or nonprofit work, or, even start some artwork that involves reuse, what kind of advice, and you can narrow that down. I know that was pretty broad. What kind of advice would you like to leave?
Well, I mean, I think that really it's never too late to learn something new, bottom line. So whether you're looking for a degree or you're just looking to dabble, I think seeking that out, there's plenty of resources there to try. So much of things are on YouTube too. You don't even need to travel to learn how to do little things. And that would apply also to like learn how to fix some things, learn how to mend some things too. I think as far as the nonprofits go, though, I think, again, in the spirit of partnerships that we've really embodied at Resource Depot, I would caution people against starting a nonprofit at this point in our area, because do some research and see, are there other people that are serving and doing what you'd like to do, and how can you partner with them and build them up instead of starting another nonprofit it's a lot of work to all the things that you have to do. It's much better to collaborate and partner. And so that's where I would look to, what's already out there, how can you get involved? Because we need to be coming together. And in fact, I think with Resource Depot, it's like if we had the perfect partner where we can merge with somebody and just like keep the momentum going, we would, because we shouldn't be competing with trying to make this community better.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. What is next for Resource Depot? Are there any new initiatives, programs, goals that you're particularly excited about? I know you mentioned kind of the nonprofit, sharing resource.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always like kind of in the back burner. Like we want to just kind of keep pushing that out and building our network. We just recently piloted a Science for Sustainability project that we partnered with Solid Waste Authority and CEMEX to election signs are not, that material is not locally recyclable. But there's a plant in Plant City, ironically, called New Cycle that can recycle that into alternatives for coal. And so we basically did a collection and tried to educate people on the fact that these signs should go. And we're trying to work with candidates as we, get further to again, breaking that cycle of we just order signs and we put them out and they're eyesores. And so we're trying to do that. That's one initiative we just had that was pretty successful that we look to continue. And I think too, just with some stuff coming up, we have Waste to Wonder, our show coming up in January. The opening is on the 17th. So we encourage everybody to come by. We have a refashion weekend. So we don't take clothing normally, but we do take from November to February for this event. And it's kind of just extending our messaging to things that everybody can relate to. We're all wearing clothes. We all have closets that are probably too full. So that's an area where, again, you can donate your clothes that are taking up space in your closet that you're really not using. And when you come to our event, you can replace them with pre-loved, secondhand, but good quality that are new to you. And it's the same thing of going out shopping, except you're getting things again that are not being made. I mean, the textile industry is so wasteful. So we kind of use this as a point to kind of talk about that too. And a lot of our clientele are women. So it's a great way to kind of connect women to our messaging. But it's a really fun event. So we're doing that again. So that'll be February 28th and March 1st. This year. So
I have been before and I will try to come again.
Yes.
It is a fun event. And I like to bring people and tell people about it. That's a great one. Okay, last question. Where can people connect with you if you want to direct them to any, personal outlets or, social media, websites?
Sure.
Tell them where they can find
so
you.
resourcedepot.org is our website where you can make a donation appointment and check out our gallery programs and other things we have going on. And then we're really active on Facebook and Instagram. So Resource Depot is our handle for that. But we're located at 2508 Florida Avenue. We're just down off of Belvedere, block west of Dixie. If you know where Rust and Wax is, we share the same building. So that's a great place to check out as well when you're over there in Composition Coffee. So we're tucked in there. And again, open Tuesday through Thursday, 11 to 5 and Saturdays, 9 to 2.
Amazing. All right. Well, I hope you get lots of new visitors.
Yes, me too. And hope to see you by soon.
Definitely. You will. You will. I've got an ArtiGras to prepare for. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. I really appreciate all your wonderful answers and insights. And thank you to all of our viewers and listeners for checking out this episode. I hope you enjoyed it and that you'll check out more of Resource Depot. And lastly, thanks to our sponsor, the Cultural Council for Palm Beach County. We always appreciate you. See you next time on the ArtiGras podcast.